The European Parliament approved the proposal for the Euro 7 emissions regulation text, with 329 votes in favor, 230 against, and 41 abstentions. The new regulation will update current limits for exhaust emissions, introduce new measures to reduce tire and brake emissions, and enhance battery durability. The next steps involve the European Council and the European Commission, with the possibility of concluding the process by early December. The Swiss Federal Council has decided to eliminate tax exemptions for e-vehicles starting January 1, 2024. Following the removal of the exemption, e-vehicles will be subject to a standard 4% duty rate applied to automobiles for passenger or goods transport. The primary goal of this decision is to address shortfalls in tax revenue and ensure the funds allocated to the Motorway and Urban Transportation Fund. The Parliament approved its negotiation position by 445 votes in favor, 152 against, and 30 abstentions. Members of the European Parliament are advocating for ambitious targets to decrease CO2 emissions from medium and heavy trucks. The proposed targets are 45% for the period 2030-2034, 65% for 2035-2039, and 90% from 2040 onwards.
Welcome to the second day of the Mobility Portal Charge Infrastructure Summit titled European Trends in Charging Infrastructure. Today we discuss AFIR, the future of recharging infrastructure, and the new technological trends in public recharging on motorways and in cities. I'm Javier Altamirano, the editor of Mobility Portal Europe, and this is my colleague Luciano Ercoli, marketing analyst. We will have the participation of top-level companies such as Allego, PowerGo, Charin, Total Energies, BP, Trojan Energy, Claritas Investments, ChargeUp Europe, and Ebusco.
Thank you, Javiera, for the introduction. As you said, we have great companies and leaders participating today. From Mobility Portal Europe, we've been working on this event for months, and we hope you can all enjoy it and gain clever insights about what's happening in the sector. We will soon be working on our events for next year, so in case you want to participate with your company as a sponsor, as a speaker, or in an interview, feel free to contact us. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest news on electric and sustainable mobility. You can find us on LinkedIn as Mobility Portal Europe. Also, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a like, and comment from where you are watching us. Welcome to our event, and I hope we have a special time together. To start with the debate panels, Javiera will be moderating an exciting one with Manuel Trota from Allego, Ivo Van Dam from PowerGo, and Michael Keller from Charin.
Thank you, Luciano. To those watching, I invite you to stay connected as the first panel of discussion is about to begin. Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to moderate this first panel discussion titled Recharge Infrastructure Essential to Achieve AFIR Targets. Today we have the honor of debating with Manuel Trota, Product Manager Charging and Payment Solutions at Allego, Ivo Van Dam, CTO at PowerGo, and Michael Keller, Executive Board at Charin. Thank you very much for all of you. The idea of this panel is to make the same question to all the three speakers so they can discuss the same topics related to AFIR. As it is a debate, each speaker can raise their hand to interrupt another speaker and contribute with ideas. Now let's start with the first question, which is what projects are they currently working on and what are their upcoming projects? Please, Manuel, could you start?
Yeah. Hi, Javiera. Hi, Luciano, and everyone. Thanks for the invite. Well, here at Allego, being a leading pan-European charge point operator in fast and ultra fast, well, under our project, we put our customer at focus, no? So to make their satisfaction is key for us. So our project focus on their convenience and peace of mind. So with regards to convenience, as we secure roaming and the contactless payment, which is already active for us, the next step to bring this convenience to a new level is to work on plug and charge. So we aim to relate that very soon, and it's based on the ISO standard, so that we make sure it's safe in the best possible way. And with regards to peace of mind, yes. So we're certainly focusing on, if you imagine our customer journey from Porto to Vilnius, it has to be seamless. So we need to have enough charging hubs. So we work with a lot of retailers, and we have just announced Porta, Carrefour, IKEA, and a lot more will be unveiled soon.
Okay, and Ivo, would you like to tell us about PowerGo's current and future projects?
Yes, so we at this time we're working on the rollout of a lot of projects in the Nordics, but also coping with the challenges that we get thrown at us that we discussed later about grid congestion, etc. And we're exploring a lot of fleet locations, so fleet charging locations for our customers. So those are the major projects that we're working on at the moment.
Great. And Michael, what about Charin's initiatives?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for supporting this development by having this panel discussion. Charin is a global association with more than 300 members, and we are supporting all kinds of technology development all around charging, coming from the energy side, but also going to the chargers, vehicle, and also the software and the information exchange. And there we have several developments ongoing where we are supporting or do pre-development together with all our members on a global base for new technologies, like also megawatt charging system, MDS, or also for new areas of industry beside the pure, but we're talking mainly about the passenger car, but also for trucks. But beside that, we also have projects for mining applications and also first development steps regarding aviation and marine applications.
Okay, and now we move on the second question. Do you believe that in the near future, electric vehicle charging stations could be located every 60 kilometers? Do you believe all countries will be able to meet the goals outlined in AFIR, or do some countries have better chances than others? Please, Michael, if you want, you can start.
Yeah, I think we have to differentiate. Already some countries in Europe have achieved this target, so that's not an issue for them, but we have different stages of development of the different regions in Europe. But in general, I see it as a necessity that we are achieving these targets, and I don't see any real issue to have a 60 kilometers distance between high power charging stations on the main routes around Europe. And that is also be a must-have, but in the future, if you look in the future, if you have more intense traveling going around on electric vehicles, we need even more than that. We need also in between, or we need in addition further capacities. Not only have a station, as you know, okay, you can travel to Europe. It's also regarding the capacity, especially during travel times like summer or winter, when you have special high frequency routes to the Alps, which are now coming up for skiing, where we have a route. Maybe some idea just coming from Holland to Germany to Austria, for example, where we already have seen some queuing, but also in summer in other directions. I think that's very important to understand. It's not only the distance and the availability, it's also the capacity what you have to install. And beside that, we also have to take care of the development in a longer term. Because if you want to achieve really in real life the Fit for 55 target, we have to have about 70 to 80% EVs in the market in the year 2030 and following years. And to achieve that, we need to have also the people buying electric cars who have no access to their own parking place where they can put their own charger, have the access to an own parking spot to park at home or at work. And this is something which is not reflected yet in this extent in the AFIR. So I really support the AFIR a lot. It's good to have a clear regulation, but this is just a first step to really achieve the 55 targets. We really need to also think about the other areas of customers which need to change from a combustion car to electric car to be able to stay mobile in the electrified world.
And Ivo, what do you think? Do you agree with Michael's position? Ivo, sorry, you are mute.
Yes, I agree with Michael in that sense that we need a lot more than average 60 kilometers a charge point, and we need to think about the power that we offer there, and also the stress it does on the grid and how we can cope with that. So I think there's a lot of challenges, but I think it's doable, and I think we have to do a lot more than just every 60 kilometers a charger. I think about urban areas, about all areas where you can park at a certain time. You have to think about what speed do we need to offer the cars, and there's going to be a lot of changes in technology in the future. So we need to be adaptable to that as well.
Great. And Emmanuel, would you like to conclude this round with your perspective?
Which can only be agreeing with both Michael and Ivo, because and I like the example of the ski holiday. So it's season, right? So we have to make it easy and possible. Like I said, has to be convenient, has to be seamless for our electric driver to make these journeys. So that's why it's not just whether if it's 60 kilometer enough, but if this is their need, and I agree, the need will be to have more than that, especially now, and those special routes. So then the only question, and I guess let's continue on that, is about the grid access and about how to overcome all of those first initial problems. Let's say bottlenecks to make things happen, but also how to make them convenient, because like AFR is just the beginning. Also the grid access is just the beginning. So yeah.
Okay, I see that there are many people joining the live stream. I invite you to comment in the chat and let us know where are you watching from. Now let's proceed with the third round of questions. What is necessary to drive the installation of charging infrastructure in European countries? Do you believe additional incentives are needed? Now, Ivo, would you like to start? You are muted.
I think looking at the market, I think what we need is a lot more entrepreneurial companies like we have now. So I'm looking at all the competition, they are working very hard to claim the land to put the chargers on. So I think on that sense, we're doing quite good. I think looking at the countries themselves and incentives, as long as there is no stable utilization rate, it's very hard to really go ahead with a stable business case, and that's making it harder to really execute on the contracts that are signed sometimes. So I see a lot of changes in that sense needed. I think for the developed countries, looking at the EV side, we have a healthy business case. There's nothing that we need to have incentivized other than the capacity on the grid. Again, I think that's the biggest challenge, and maybe that has to be incentivized somehow to expand the grid in a faster pace.
Okay, Michael, please.
It's always good to have incentives to push the market, but if the companies who are investing are not seeing that there's a real stable business coming, it's not working. So we have in total to take care that the targets, the CO2 targets in Europe are not only achieved by the numbers of cars. We also need to achieve it on the number of infrastructure charging point, of the energy availability, but also either if you talk about the like I was saying, you need the space, you need the approval to put there a charger in place. It takes sometimes months, but also takes sometimes years to execute such a project. Yeah? And also what kind of areas are given as the ability and the allowance to use. Yeah? And then you also need a grid connection sometimes in addition to such a site, and also this must be approved and be projected and be started. And to be honest, I don't see really a clear support in other regulations that this is being pushed. Yeah, one thing is money, but at the end, if it's not able to push through the different regulations and all the different processes you need to fulfill if you want to build up a charging stations, we will not end up on the real needed demand of locations and charging energy. So that's really need of having also a European-wide regulation on that maybe, but at least we have to take action to bring awareness in all the different member states and all the different people who are doing the regulations to prepare that energy and the grid and also the locations for the stations are pre-thought so that everyone knows what's coming, because that's not the case right now. We are in most cases are really doing still pioneer work to bring it to real life, that the charging stations can be built, and this has to be improved and have to be fastened and have to be clear for everyone that this is a necessity, which is a bit far away from the pure goal from Fit for 55, but is a clear direct connection. If you don't take care of these regulation topics and all these processes, we will not achieve that. And I say that we don't achieve it, I say we have to take action, and then we will achieve it.
Yeah, I see. And Manuel, do you believe additional incentives are needed or not?
Yeah, so incentives indeed can be read in a broad sense. There are needed many things, and I would say on top of the essentials, such as the resources and the reliable hardwares. But if we stick to resources or incentives, well, of course, the grid access is the big bottleneck, like you said, and particularly, like Michael said, it's about first the process to get it, and not even the timeline, which should be shortened, so it should have one angle, but also the actual process to get them, because currently there are processes that only look at the, let's say, arithmetical sum of the needs, while in reality it's only 60% of that is needed because of real usage of it. And all of those piled up create a number of additional bottlenecks. So yeah, we need to help the grid operators to facilitate that. And because we mentioned already the congestion issue, there are of course several solutions that could mitigate that, and batteries being one of these. However, those are extremely capex intense. So maybe we could also look at how a large or small CPO can have this in a sustainable way for the future, given that it's a very early stage for this new technologies upcoming. So this could, in the long run, also give an unpredictable type of investment. So yeah, we of course, there is enough for everyone, and we have all the means, but there are a couple of critical factors. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see. For those watching, I invite you to follow Mobility Portal Europe on LinkedIn and Instagram, and connect with the speakers on LinkedIn and their companies. And I also invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, what about the electrical grids? Do you consider the electrical grids ready to meet future of energy demand from electric vehicles? Michael, do you want to start?
It depends. Yeah, I see it in the way that if you have these high power charging stations on the long distance travel lines around Europe, there are some points who are already ready because they are somehow close to a high power line. But there are several areas where we need to extend the grid to bring the power really to the streets and highways. But on the other side, if I look on the let's say private charging or semi-private charging, and like if you're going for charging during daytime and at work, I think it's if you just see the power you want to connect by all the cars, the grid, it sounds like as a problem. But also here we have to think from the side of the solution. Because from Chan, we always have the big picture. We see on one side the renewable energies, on the other side the vehicles who are using the electricity and they want to use CO2 neutral electricity. And if we bring smart charging on all these places where the cars are charging for longer time, I think that's a benefit for the grid and for the whole energy system, because you can then control that on one side, the renewable energies are much highly used, that you have more CO2 neutral energy directly feed and physical feed into the cars. And on the other hand, you can also control in a way that the grid as it exists is used more efficient and bring more energy to the same grid lines, because you can balance the power of the individual charging points by having a smart charging control system who brings it at the right time when the grid is capable and also when the renewable energy is available. And if you think in that way, there's still maybe in long term more grid to be built and more wires to put in the ground, but we have much more chances to improve the actual system and to use it more efficient than a lot of people think.
Okay. Yeah, and Ivo, what do you think?
About if the grids are ready, I don't think so. Are they going to be ready in our current world, how we connect now? No, they're not. But I think Michael has a good point. We need to be smarter about connecting, be smarter about charging. As soon as you have a problem as a market, you have to drive innovation and technology to the right point of where you can utilize the right energy at the right time. Will it work for private cars? I don't know, but will it work for a large fleet or truck charging, etc.? Yes, that's much more plannable. That's much more in line with what would with a good grid management. So I think in that sense, is it ready? No. Will it be ready? No, but we will cope with it in our way. But we need a lot of innovation technology. We need to work together, and I really ask every CPO active in the market to be innovative and make sure that the technology is leading and not lagging behind.
Okay. And Manuel, would you like to conclude this round of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as said before, it all starts from the reason that creates the bottleneck and the fact that this total capacity is affected by how the grid operator are asked to calculate this, by how there are different requirements across the single countries. If you think about the requirements on low volt cabinet in Germany, how different they are and how different they are in across all the regions. So this is something that is a bottleneck up front. Then, like Ivo was saying, the problems can be assessed differently whether you have a fleet or whether you are focusing on a private type of charging. And indeed, there are numerous solutions like indeed smart charging mentioned by Michael, peak shaving, and as I said, also the batteries. But some of those are, we are now at the forefront of this innovation, so require quite some attention by all the CPOs. So yeah, this would be also for Lego one of the key focus.
Okay. And I want to ask you if you believe that countries feel a certain pressure to meet the goals of the AFIR, and if you think there are many issues that in the regulations that should be reviewed or modified, or if it is okay. Manuel, if you wanna to continue, if you continue.
Yeah, I think it partially already mentioned by Michael, and I agree that Europe is fragmented. I mean, some of the country can be already, let's say, on par or very close to comply. But let's consider AFIR as a starting point first. And it's an important point for the other countries that are not mature enough or mature yet to be on par. So yeah, that's why pressure, I would say healthy pressure.
Okay, and Ivo, what do you think?
I'm not a politician, so I don't know if they feel pressured. So, but I can imagine that if in certain countries, if the adaptation of EV is not where you want it, and you're very conservative in that sense, you're not going to push the 60-kilometer thing. So it's really depending on the country and the politics that are happening on the European level. But as said, I'm more into technology and not so much in politics. So I can imagine some countries feel pressured to meet the demands. And
And Michael, what do you think? Do you agree with Michael's, with Ivo's and Manuel positions?
Yeah, like Mara said, it's very different what development stage the member state is regarding the move to e-mobility. And what we've seen during the negotiations of the AFIR between the member states and the discussions going back and forth about the exact definition of the targets, that there are for sure some countries are having, either because of their political direction they want to go, or their status of actual development regarding charging infrastructure in their country. They for sure have some pressure or some potential discussions or gap to fill and or to discuss at least. But it's at the end also a question how you want to achieve this Fit for 55 target, yeah? And there must be an agreement European-wide that we want to achieve that. And that's, for me, it's not only a pressure by executing the AFIR for some countries, it's for me also a big pressure for the whole European community and all the member states together in the parliament, also in the commission, on a level that we overall achieve these targets. And at the end, it maybe can be differentiated between some targets of the country in the details. Yeah, that's maybe for the future increase of the targets politically necessary to get this through the different like Parliament and the Commission discussion. But we have to take all these actions. We have to do a lot, yeah? And it's not one-dimensional, it's multi-dimensional. They have to take care of the renewable energy in the different countries. They have to care that renewable energy is really physically brought into the electric cars and also the other mobility products, yeah, like I mentioned also with marine applications, trucks, and so on. And that's what we see also in the truck business. It's easy to draw a line through Europe and say, okay, this line has now been developed in a way that you can drive this with a pure electric truck. Okay, that's fine, yeah, but you need to have it over the whole area of Europe to be put in place and in operation, and that's the next step. You also have to have in mind that this is also at least as important as the passenger cars to convert the truck and bus industry. But on the other hand, I see there also more pressure coming from the commercial side. Because in the discussion with the truck companies, it's a bit different than we talk with the customers who are buying a passenger car. Because there you have to talk about fears, impressions of the product, and also sometimes prices. But in the truck industry, it's pure about total cost of ownership. They just make a math out of it. Investment, okay, electric truck is more expensive than a combustion truck, than a diesel truck. Okay, fine, but then they calculate the energy, what they need over time to run this truck, and they make an equation and make a line under it, and then the sum, okay, now it's positive, okay, then we decide for electric truck. And that will happen much faster, that the transition after making calculation is coming, that you change from diesel trucks to electric trucks, and then we really have a pressure in the politics, because that's economically driven decision, which then increases very fast the share of electric trucks all over Europe. And then they have to go through all the different countries, even if they are well developed right now or not as good developed right now.
Yeah. And Michael, at general level, what actions needed to be taken for European countries to continue progressing towards electric mobility and meet their emission reduction objectives? At general level.
So, like we said already, is the regulations. It has to be clear that there's a green light for every project who wants to install chargings no matter where. We have also people to take care to update the regulations regarding grid integration of all these e-mobility, and also not only that's just a part of it. Most people think about grid integration regarding bidirectional charging. I don't. I just see the real connection that when the car or truck needs energy, it must be available. So this is something really have to thought through, and also where we have to make all the digital infrastructure in behind available, so that the industry from energy and truck and car business are getting more and more together. Yeah. And also to have the ability to get more space available, so that is really clear for everyone. This is something we need to go forward in the future, and also to enable more companies to join that, also to have the installation work to be able to be done what we need. And that is also a big portion of effort we have to put into. We need the labor, we need the work, who's installing and putting all these chargers in place to build these charging stations, and that's something what shall be really changed in the mindset of the different people in decision making positions, because it's not a threat for the combustion industry. It's really a transition. When you are with this transition, you can ensure that you have the people also being fully in labor by having all these new work to do.
Okay. And Manuel, what do you think? Do you agree with Michael's position? Do you need that other actions are needed?
Well, yes, overall, I agree. Other actions needed, yes, because again, mostly towards the simplification, not only, as I mentioned, about the to get grid access and those things, but also because this is we're talking about building a new infrastructure, but once you build, you need to maintain it. And I think about certain specific certifications needed for from the metrology point of view. So without going into the details, and this is linked also a little bit on the labor side mentioned by Michael. We touched upon it before. So in order to secure so many of those requirements that maybe are partially legacy from the past from other businesses, yeah, there is basically room to improve on how to further simplify that and make this sustainable, because ultimately, yeah, we have the driver at our heart, right? So if we make it difficult for us, then this will be reverted on the experience or actually also on cost for our drivers. So we should look at the whole chain of events and simplify this as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Manuel. And Ivo, would you like to conclude?
Yes. So I think what we need, in especially on a local level, is reduced planning issues. Like Michael said before, really the time between starting the construction and having it grid connected in some countries, that's really sometimes 1 year up to 1.5 years. I think we need to be clear or make agreements about roaming, because that is becoming a more and more issue the more private drivers are joining the EV fleet. I think from a governmental side, I think if we drive innovation and technology, I think that's most important, because innovation as a company, if you try to be innovative, you're just creative. I mean, innovation comes through a cooperation. Innovation, you never do that alone. You have to do that as a market or and that has to be stimulated. So I think those are the most important things. You have to be on top of what Manuel and Michael said before. I think solving these issues and driving the innovation will help us immensely with expanding the network and being it fit for purpose for the number of EVs coming to the European roads.
Okay.
I would like to jump on the topic of innovation, because I think that's very important what you said, Ivo. So this is really also one of the key drivers to improve the products, to always develop them further, no matter if it's on the infrastructure side or on the car side. And there also see a very important point that we also have to, let's say, educate all the different people in the decision making positions, where the developments either on the infrastructure side with the connection to the grid, with the ability to also get more renewable energy into the cars and trucks, and also regarding higher charging power, what I also see on the EV side, where we have more and more cars on a higher voltage level with 800-volt board net and things like that, where they can increase the charging power now up to 400 kilowatts, and that's really driving it very strong forward. That also the customer convenience is increased. Yeah? If you have a shorter charge because you have a innovative product as a charger with 800 volts and also a car with 800 volts, this is also on benefits for achieving the overall goals. Yeah? So innovation is also driving the ability to achieve the targets, and this also must be understood so that also the governments and also the European Commission can also guide for the next step the industry and also the investment makers in the right direction, because it's not, nothing is more bad than stranded investments. If you invested not in the appropriate future-proof technology. And just one example with the 800-volt board net. So we have to have chargers everywhere which are able to do the 800 or up to 1000 volts, so that they can be on long term also be used by innovating on the car side. And there are a lot more other things we have to keep in mind, like digital connection, the right interface, the right software protocols which are future proof, where we also have to take care of. And that's something which is also at least partially be discussed around AFIR, but there's a lot more to come and more to take care of to really make it a success.
Yeah, I agree with you. And now, everyone, we have 1 or 2 minutes to conclude their participation. So, Ivo, would you like to start?
I would like to start, but I didn't get your question. I didn't get what you said. Sorry.
Yeah, you have 1 or 2 minutes to conclude your presentation. Is we are finishing.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. I think what we're saying here, basically, all of us, is we want to grow the network. We want to make sure that everybody can charge who wants to charge. And I think the challenges are discussed here openly, and I like that a lot. And I think we need to solve a lot of issues, but they're minor issues if you look at it a few years from now. So I think yeah, in that sense we're doing good, but we have to do better.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivo. Now, Manuel.
Yeah, well, to wrap it up, I would say our drivers are in the center, and everything that we do, so the scale up of the charging infrastructure, doing innovation, removing blocking point, it's always towards making their life easier and being sustainable while doing this. Basically, we are all of us. There is high demand, and everyone will be needed. So in this journey, there is room for everyone. From our part, we are continuing, rolling out of what it is mature markets, but we are continuing trying to develop and expand that, for example, in Spain, in Italy, Poland, Baltics, everywhere. So, but for this, like said, similar to innovation, like Ivo said, yeah, it's a joint effort. So it's not only the CPO being there, but having support also by with the right mindset by the local authorities and government.
Okay, thank you very much, Manuel. Now, Michael.
Yeah, it's really a big step on also very high level of innovation what we already see, and they have already put a lot of efforts in building up infrastructure, building up technologies for on the car side, on the truck side, but also other application like I mentioned with mining and so on. But we still have a big challenge in front of us. Yeah, like we have already seen some detailed things like what Manu said about the labor, what we need to do. I was said about the infrastructure, the grids, what we have to improve. All the things has been done, but the basic message is really we more or less know what to do. We have also to push for further innovation in some areas. But in the end, key is really collaboration. We need to have a common basis for common technologies, for common standards and also common protocols to be able to have a level playing field so that every company with their own on-top innovation and product differentiation are able to make their business and able to grow. And therefore, we need a common community and a common work. And this will bring the success to achieve the overall target of our European 55 targets.
Okay. Michael, Ivo, Manuel, it has been an honor to listen to you. Thank you for participating in this event. And to those watching, I invite you to follow Mobility Portal Europe on social media and connect with the speakers and companies on LinkedIn. Stay tuned as the next panel titled Electric Infrastructure for Electromobility, How to Plan the System for the Future, moderated by my colleague, Florencia Guglielmetti, is about to begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Florencia Guglielmetti and I'm journalist of Mobility Portal. In this opportunity, I will be also the moderator of this panel titled Electric Infrastructure for Electromobility, How to Plan the System for the Future. And I have the pleasure of being joined today by Ignacio Barbero, Director of E-Mobility at Total Energies, Ildefonso Boto Lopez, General Manager Electrification Southern Europe at BP, and Mark Constable, Head of Public Affairs at Trojan Energy. Welcome, all of you. Well, there's a lot to discuss today. Given that we are a media always seeking exclusive, I would like to start with the topic of projects. So let's start with Ignacio. Ignacio, Total Energies has been awarded contracts across Europe for the installation and operation of more than 3,000 charging points. How are these projects progressing, and when will they be operational?
Well, hi everybody. Thank you to Mobility Portal to invite us. So, well, each one of this project in all the cities has obviously different schedule and different rhythm. But we can say that, for example, for London or for Brussels or Paris, we are already present since a while. So everything is active and in operation. Then we have Singapore, for example, that has started 1 month ago. And the next in the next future will be Madrid, that will be open in between February and March, and then finally Berlin, that must be operational in at the end of 2024. Each country has a different speeds. Each country has different requirements. Each government, each city has a different topics to work with. So each one of the projects is absolutely different from the other, and the rhythm is different. But most of them has an advantage. I say large cities all over the world usually they push to help you to start rapidly. It's because most of the project has the problem of administrative delays. But in the case of public tenders, that administrative delay is shorter because your customer is obviously the administration. So most of them are short schedules, and most of them will be open in right times.
Perfect, Ignacio. Then we will go into go deeper in the other projects of Total Energies. But now I would like to speak to Ildefonso, because recently BP invested $100 million on Tesla chargers. Well, just Ildefonso left the studio, so I will continue with Mark until Ildefonso came back. So, well, Mark, I know that in the case of Trojan, you are working in a very huge project. So if you could give me details about this.
Yeah, sure. And good afternoon, everybody. It's a very great pleasure to be invited to speak to you all. So Trojan Energy is a relatively new company in the United Kingdom. We're based in Scotland, where we manufacture all our own electric vehicle charging points. And we are installing those charge points across a number of different projects in London. Our largest project is for 1,300 charge points. For anybody who doesn't know, London is not a single city in terms of its municipal authorities. There are 33 different councils, that we call them, in London, and we are working with 3 of them. Our largest project is in the London Borough of Barnet, which is northwest London, covers around about 400,000 people, and we are installing 1,300 of our unique flat and flush pavement chargers for local residents to use for their electric vehicles. Our technology is unique in that when the charger is not in use, it doesn't have any presence above the highway. There's no obstacle. All the charge point is located is underground. And it's taken us around about 6 months. We're about halfway through the project now. We've installed around about 600 to 700. We've got about another 600 to 700 to go. And that project will be completed in around about April of May 2024. And it represents Trojan's first major commercial project, which is actually a very, very big project to start a company with, being as it's got 1,300 charge points.
Well, as it is so huge, we have a lot of details, and then we will continue discussing. We have some problems with the connection of Ildefonso, so we will continue to the next round. And when we can, after we reconnect with him, we continue with all his questions, because it's very interesting what BP is doing. Well, he's appearing and then leaving, so I will continue with Ignacio now. I would like to discuss about the bureaucratic situation surrounding the processing of charging points permits. That maybe have you have difficulties in your operations? How could greater effectiveness be achieved in these kind of things?
Oof, in just 2 minutes. Well, it is all over Europe. It is I say the main difficulty. Probably it is very different from one country to another. For example, we can mention France, which is very centralized country, and for example, with just a single electricity distributor. Then you have Germany or Spain, where the country is absolutely decentralized, or London, as Mark has told us, 33 different administration, I can say, and also with a lot of this of electrical distributors. So the nightmare can be very important, as in Germany or in Spain, or less important as in France. But anywhere, it is the main problem usually for to deploy this infrastructure all over Europe. I know more the Spanish case and the French one, but for example, in Spain, a typical HPC project, from the signature of the contract until the operation, real operation of the charger, in average, we talk about 2 years. So it's absolutely crazy. But it's like this. In France, it's a little bit less, in between 14 and 18 months. But we talk about bureaucracy, not only with the administration, but also with the electricity distributor, that could take months and months and months. So how can we solve this? Obviously, it's like in every other area, by unification of criteria, but it's difficult all over because every country is different. So I can say, if we expect from the big macro plans of the European Union, or even the countries with the national macro plan, we can talk about big ambition. We can talk about big challenge in terms of delay, and we all agree. The private sector also, and I can say also we are enthusiastic to do it. But if you don't transfer these macro plans in a micro, that we call micro legislation, that allows really to put in place the plans, it's going to continue in a big and nice discourse in the European parliaments, but then very difficult to apply in the real life.
Perfect, Ignacio. Ildefonso, you are back. Do you hear us? Everything is okay? Well, welcome.
I think so. I hear you. I don't see you. I see just black screens with something which is going in rounds. But
well, but we see you very well, so we can continue. Don't worry. I would like to ask you about BP. Recently, BP invested $100 million on Tesla chargers, marking the first sale of Tesla charging equipment to an external company. What can you tell us about this initiative, and where will these chargers be placed?
Sure. As you said, it's the first time Tesla ultra-fast chargers will be purchased for deployment on an independent EV charging network. The chargers will have an output of 250 kilowatts, will be branded, installed and operated by BP Pools, and it will start in 2024. And we will be using all the sites that we have within our BP family of brands, including Travel Centers of America, the Thorntons brand, APMP, Moco, and the BP large-scale HEA hubs, which are big hubs that we are building across the United States. First sites are going to be deployed in Houston, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Washington. And I would say that not only in public charging, we will be using these chargers also with fleet customers. We think that Tesla technology on the hardware with our leading charge management software, Omega, will be a unique offer for fleet customers. We also need to take into consideration that Tesla chargers actually hold the option to connect through the two different standards, the NCAS and CCS, through their Magic Dock. And we think this will be an incredible advantage for that market. So really looking forward to see these chargers on the ground, and I'm really happy with the deal.
Perfect, Ildefonso. Then we will discuss more about this. But I would like to go with Mark because before he talked about some difficulties during this project that they are dealing with. And I would like to know what have been the main challenges you have encountered.
Yeah, so the main challenges all are related to the laws for working and installing equipment of any kind in a public place or on a road, on a pavement. None of the laws in the UK were written at a time when electric vehicle infrastructure was being rolled out. And the UK hasn't really changed any of its laws in terms of working on the street, working in terms of planning permission, in order to be able to streamline the processes. So there's a lot of bureaucracy working with local authorities in the UK. I think it's fair to say that the UK government is looking to change some of those rules and make things more streamlined and make things quicker to implement. But there's not only a lot of process involved in installing in the UK, there's also a lot of cost. And in a lot of cases, that cost is simply to get a license to be able to do the work. And of course, that changes the business model of the charging and the costs to the end consumer, which we're trying to keep as low as possible. So it's certainly in the last year or so, the UK government has recognised that those challenges need to be met. And I'm happy to say that they are beginning to do work to change some of those rules to make projects to be delivered more quickly and at a lower cost.
Perfect. You remarked the business model, then we will discuss about it. I think that's very interesting to talk about this. I would like to come back to Ildefonso now because he talked about the collaboration with Tesla, and I would like to know if there is new partnerships with this kind of companies and what kind of projects, if there is this kind of new collaborations, what kind of projects are you working on?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we usually work with three types of partnerships. There's one which is, we try to find destination charging partners. I think we have recently announced several deals in that space. One with M&S in the UK, where we are going to electrify 70 MSN stores, trying to reach 900 charge points. There's a similar deal in Germany with Rewe. We intend to have close to 180 stores by the end of 2024. And there's also a cross-European agreement with Alcoa, where we are going to be electrifying probably 100 fast charging hubs across Europe. The second type of deal that we usually try to reach, and where we think it's really important to have collaboration with others is demand agreements. We have recently announced a deal with Earth in the US, where we are going to install EV chargers on their dealer sites, but not only that, we will be offering solutions for the customers. And of course, we have a global partnership with Uber, where we are trying to promote the decarbonization of their vehicles, and they basically provide access to our BP high-speed charging network across Europe. And the third phase, which we're trying to find synergies with other companies, is what we call investments and joint ventures. And I will highlight here the joint venture we signed several years ago with Didi in China, where we are basically building charging hubs for their drivers. Is really successful. We have recently announced an investment of $11 million in Magenta Mobility, which is one of the mobility solutions provider for last mile delivery in India. Is now active in 7 cities, and India is a key market for the electrification business. And of course, I'm Spanish, I'm in Spain, and as you probably know, we announced a joint venture with Iberdrola to deploy up to 11,000 charge points by 2030, and we are actually looking forward to see the joint venture in operation very, very soon.
Well, as Mobility Portal, we are going to follow all these projects, of course. And now I would like to talk to Ignacio, because I would like to know, do you consider that there is an uneven distribution of public charging points in Europe? And how do you think can this be addressed? You are mute.
Sorry. So it's not easy, because first of all, we need to know what does it means unequal distribution, because it's not only across Europe. If we see the trends, the curves of infrastructure in every country in Europe, the problem is the moment you start, but the curve, the trend is exactly the same in Norway that is going to be in Spain or in any other country. Just the problem is that Norway has started before and Spain is going to start later on. But then when the moment you start, a country starts in Europe, we can see exactly the same curve in almost the same curve in every country. So the main problem for us, what does it mean unequal distribution? It's the same a highway than a secondary road. It is the same distribution in large cities than in small rural areas. So it's not only, we don't need only to speak about the differences in between, I don't know, Germany or Norway or Belgium or Spain. It's more inside every country also the unequal distribution in between different areas. Everybody wants to be in highways, everybody wants to be in large cities, but nobody cares about the rural areas or about the secondary roads. So I think that the solution is for the more attractive, obviously, areas. The private initiative is enough, and it's more than enough, I can say, to cover at different levels of maturity, independent the country, but we are going to arrive all together at the end of the road without any doubt. But the problem, and the main problem, is that areas that probably doesn't has interest has no interest for anybody. So in that areas, a kind of promotion from the public administration could be necessary to be sure that 100% of the territory in the European Union could be covered.
Perfect. Thanks, Ignacio. Mark, you have before talked about the challenges and you mentioned some difficulties with the public policies. I would like to know more punctual what's happening with the regulatory framework in the country. Does it facilitate private investment in charging infrastructure or not?
So we're lucky in the UK that the UK government has given a lot of monetary support. There's a lot of money that's been allocated to helping private infrastructure effectively grow. So all of that money is given on a kind of a fractional basis, in that we don't just take government money. We have to find some private investment ourselves. Up till now, it's been around about half and half, but that amount of public money that's available will drop over the next 2 to 3 years. So there is definitely lots of private investment now coming into the space. We're a scaling up business. We've found it more difficult to raise investment this year in terms of private investment for our business, both in terms of equity and asset finance, than we have in the previous years. I think the private investment market, particularly in e-mobility, has tightened somewhat and got slightly more difficult. That being said, there is still plenty of private investment available in order to be able to meet some of those challenges. Picking up something that Ignacio said, in the UK, because we have 2 different sets of rules that we have to comply with, in various parts of the UK, those 2 sets of rules are administered by 2 different parties. So in general terms, planning permission and buildings is taken by, say, a county council or a district council, but the responsibility for the roads sits with a kind of a larger kind of roads-based authority. Where those 2 organisations are the same is where most of the EV infrastructure has been deployed in the UK so far. And it's where those 2 organisations are different, i.e. the highways wants to install EV charging, the highways authority, but the local council, who isn't the highways authority, doesn't. That's where the that difference in terms of the rollout has been addressed, and it is up to private companies such as ourselves in the UK to absolutely make sure that we bring all of those local authorities along with us. And it's fair to say, with so many different local authorities in the UK, some are very, very advanced in their thinking around electric vehicles and e-mobility, and some have thought about it very, very little. And most of the kind of the longer term difficulties are based around that different speed of people developing their knowledge and their internal kind of administration strategies. But there is no shortage of private investment in the UK for the right level of project.
Perfect, Mark. Now I would like to go with Ildefonso because, I would like to know about the plans of EPs to reduce oil and gas production by 2030. Do you believe that you can meet those objectives? How do you plan to achieve this?
Well, 3 years ago, we announced a big change in the company. We initiated a transformation, which is going from an international oil company to an integrated energy company. And the key target is we want to become a net zero emissions company by 2050 or sooner. And we are proving that. I mean, just if you look into the capital deployment that we have put into our what we call transition growth engine, it has increased from 3% in 2019 to roughly 30% in 2022, which is 10 times more. And our plan is to reach roughly 50% by 2030. And this transition growth engine, we're talking about investing in electric vehicle charging, we're talking about investing in sustainable aviation fuels and hydrogen for industries that are actually difficult to decarbonize. As an example, in Spain, the country where I live, BP has been present for more than 70 years. We have announced an investment of roughly 3 billion euros by 2030. 1 billion will be in electric vehicle charging through the joint venture with Iberdrola, and another 2 billion will be in biofuels and green hydrogen. So by 2030, I mean, we want to have very clear targets, right? And those targets are we want to reduce our emissions from our operations by 50% compared to 2019. We want to reduce our emissions associated with oil and gas production between 20 to 30% compared to 2019 as well. And we want to reduce the carbon intensity of our products, the products that we sell, between 15 to 20%, again, compared to 2019. All in all, I mean, we estimate that the oil and gas production will be around 2 million barrels per day in 2030. and that basically represents 25% of reduction compared to 2019. I think the challenge here is we want to keep reducing this, but we want to maintain the current flow of energy. I think we need to be smart on the way we do this to, not affect the supply and demand balance, and therefore create a price situation that will be harmful for customers, enterprises, and governments.
Perfect. Thanks, Ildefonso. Ignacio, coming back to you, this year a decree was issued requiring services areas on, for example, French and Spanish highways, for example, to be equipped with electric vehicle chargers. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think compliance with this decree can be achieved in the short term?
Well, I think that there is two main topics on this. Obviously, legislation that force helps every time, but just force, it's not enough, and it is not the way to do the things. So it's going to help. Yes, it's going to help because you must be compliant with this law in France or in Spain or any other country. But what we feel in the field when we arrive to a service station, for example, from an owner, obviously not a company one, but an owner, and you try to convince them to comply with the legislation, but also to install some charger in the gas station. Well, there is first of all, a cultural change of mind that we must implement all over. Most of the time, you listen, well, I don't want to go to the electricity because I'm not sure if it's in the future is going to be hydrogen, it's going to be biofuels, it's going to be electricity and so on, so I prefer not to invest. Or why to invest now when in France we can talk about 10% of electrical vehicle in the roads, or in Spain 3%, so very small public, and I'm going to let you a place that now is very profitable, and with that machine that we are going to put there, it is I'm going to lose money, even if the capex is given by another, but they are going to lose a place for to doing business in another way. So first of all, there is a confusion in between about the future of the fuels, and we think that electricity for light vehicles is a reality. It's not something that is going to happen. It's happening now, but we have to explain the people, all the people, the general public and the sectorial public about these matters. They still think that there is a kind of a debate, world debate about what are the energy for the future, and at the end we have 1 minute to make a small summarize. We can talk about what is the multi-energy, our vision in the multi-energy future, but we have to change the mind of that people. It's quite different, and only forcing people to do that is going to be very difficult. And secondly, this kind of education, or this kind of explanation to the public, it is necessary when you see the legislation that force a gas station or electrical station to put a 50 kilowatts charger as minimum, obviously, and then which is nothing in a highway. You need to be there for 2 hours. This is absolutely ridiculous. But in the same way, you see the tenders in large cities as London or Madrid or Paris that give you more points in the tenders if you put an HPC, a high power charger, in the public road, which is also ridiculous. I don't see how we can win more points in a tender in Brussels because we are going to install a 150 kilowatts charger, which is absolutely ridiculous, and then you force in the highways to put as minimum 50. So not only to change the mind of the people and to inform the people about the right things and the right future of the energy, but also to do the things, I think, smart, not only with forcing people to be compliant.
Thanks, Ignacio. I saw you, Mark, agreeing with him. Do you want to add something of what he has said?
Yes, it's all about putting the right charging infrastructure in the right place. In the UK, there is a lot of good infrastructure that isn't being used and won't be used in the way that it should be used because it is simply in the wrong place. There's been some progress on that, but we're still in the space where, you know, there's a lot of people who are perhaps less kind of expert in kind of electromobility than people who've worked in it for like 10 years, like I have, who are kind of specifying what it is that they want. Whereas the right answer should be invite a number of different organizations in, and they will effectively tell you where each one of their own solutions works best, and then build up the picture and then decide how to roll out the that infrastructure. You know, I've been an EV driver for 10 years as well. I use all different kinds of charging. I use quite slow AC charging, and I've got a car that charges over 200 kilowatts. So when I'm, you know, driving up and down the UK, I'm always looking for a high power, you know, 350 kilowatt charger from some of those higher power networks. Putting, you know, as Ignacio says, putting 350 kilowatt chargers in London rather than for, you know, quick recharge long journeys is not a great idea. By the same token, putting AC chargers as kind of top-up chargers in motorway service areas, that's, you know, you're not going to get very many miles back for the time that you're spending there. And there's still some infrastructure in the UK that's like that. So there's a market maturity that needs to happen. Thinking will develop as we go, and solutions will become better optimized for the situation that they're in, I think.
Very clear, Mark and Ignacio. Now I'm going to Ildefonso, and we have the information about the business model that Trojan has adopted. But then first I go with Ildefonso, and then I come back to you, Mark. I would like to know, BP aims to implement more than 100,000 charging points worldwide by 2030. How are you progressing towards this goal in the European market, and what are the company's success stories?
Well, so first of all, I would like to say that I have actually a slightly different view when it comes to the charging infrastructure, and I understand there are different type of chargers for different type of use case and companies deploying different solutions. We MPT, we are firmly committed with high power charging, and we believe that there is a lot of sense to put a 350 kilowatt in the center of London. We have done it, and you know, great utilization and great feedback from customers. But I understand, you know, that, you know, EV drivers, you know, are actually looking for different options, and that's, you know, why it's so cool to have different options in the market. Having said that, and coming back to your question, so we have a target of 100,000 charge points by 2030. Today we have already more than 27,000. We are operating in many countries across the world, in the US, in Australia, New Zealand, China, India, 6 countries in Europe, UK, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Luxembourg. We are entering a new market next year in France, which we think is going to be one of the key markets for us. But let me highlight, you know, that we are especially strong in Germany. We started there in 2018. I think we have reached now the 2,000 ultra fast charge points, and we are planning to reach roughly 3,000 by March 2024. We have just invested this year over 100 million, just to put that into context, and we have recently reached 1 million charging stations. But I think the key element here is where the service we give to customers, and our brand in Germany, which is around Pulse, has been recognized lately as the ultra fast charging provider by the Connect 2023 charging network there. So I think we are really happy with the recognition, and that's showing that, you know, we are doing the right thing and bringing the right services to customers. But we are not stopping here. I mean, we are developing, as I said before, you know, faster and faster chargers. We are now deploying more than chargers with more than 300 kilowatt power, and our aim is to reach the 100,000 mark by 2030. Have to add as well that part of that metric will be the 11,000 charge points that I mentioned before, that we will be deploying in Iberia, in Spain and Portugal through the Jornada. So really looking forward to it. committed to deliver this market and already in action.
Perfect, Ildefonso. Well, now I go back with Mark because there is one question that is still in the air. What's the business model that Trojan has adopted?
So we've adopted a business model that takes, being a relatively new company, we've learned from the business models that haven't worked quite so well in the UK, it's from perhaps 10 years ago. So we are very, very keen that any local authority, any council, any administration that we work with gets some kind of revenue, gets some money from the charge points that they host in their areas. The reason for that is that it aligns the incentives amongst all the contracting parties. There's been a challenge in the UK where new infrastructure has been installed. This is historically in the UK, I mean, where new infrastructure has been installed and it's effectively broken down and it hasn't been fixed because there is no incentive and no will around the contracting parties to actually put the infrastructure back into service. The councils don't necessarily want to spend money on staff to kind of administer the contracts. The counterpart, the private companies that have perhaps in a lot of cases fully funded the infrastructure can't effectively replace the infrastructure, under the same model. And so we've adopted a business model that is effectively returns significant revenue back to the council in return for a very, very transparent kind of open book way of understanding where Trojan makes its revenue from, which is largely from adding a margin to the electricity that's being sold. And we're very, very open about our input costs into that process. And we're finding that the councils that we contract with appreciate that level of openness in terms of the contractual arrangements. We still get into negotiations into what the price should be and what the price for their local residents should be, but we're very, very open about the way that our cost base is built up and where our revenue comes from and how much we think we're able to share in with the council in return for being able to use their streets and roads in order to host our infrastructure. And that's a model that is not necessarily, although the broad principles of the model are the same in every case, we don't have a standard offer. So we work with, every time we start working with a new partner, we come with a bespoke contractual offer, and it's different in every case. Some of the councils we work with want to own the assets and they want to take the lion's share of the revenue, which is fine with us. We're more than happy to be an operator and not an asset owner for some of our contracts. In other places, the councils don't want to have anything to do with the owning of the assets. They see them as liabilities. So Trojan retains the asset ownership, and the revenue split is kind of adjusted accordingly. So we think that's the best way to try and kind of approach there are about 200 different local organisations in the UK, local councils, and we basically need a solution for all types of contract that they want to adopt. And we operate with three boroughs, three councils in London, all of whom share a border, and each of the commercial arrangements is very different in each one of those three cases.
Thanks, Mark. Very, very clear. Now I would like to know a bit more about the future of vehicle charging in Europe. So I am going to start with Ignacio about your perspective of this topic. How do you think the future of vehicle charging in Europe will unfold?
Well, 2 years ago, we changed worldwide the target of Total Energy Group company, and we define now ourselves obviously as an integrated actor in the energy chain, but more than that, we are really a multi-energy society, and we think that the future is going to be multi-energy. I mean, it's not a discussion about to change the E way to produce energy to the B one, the petrol to the electricity and so on. You need A plus B plus 3 plus D. You need, for example, for aviation, sustainable fuel, or you need gas for ships, but you can use electricity for cars, hydrogen, why not for heavy duty in transportation? So really what I see in the future is really a multi-energy ecosystem that is going to need everything. Obviously, the addition of A plus B plus C plus D must be net zero in 2050 or early, if we can. But I think that still many kinds of different energies has a place in the future, and it's not only about electricity. It's about a smart mix of everything.
Thanks, Ignacio. Ildefonso, in your case, what significant changes have you observed in the electromobility industry in recent years, and what is expected for the future?
Well, I mean, if we look into the market, I mean, market is changing quickly, right? And it's evolving on a day-by-day basis. But if I reflect on what are the three key changes I've seen over the last years, I think first of all is the evolution that technology when it comes to speed. We have many more vehicles today that are capable to charge at high speeds, and that's having an impact on the infrastructure that is being deployed. So we're seeing more kind of fast charges and ultra fast charges compared to slow charges, that were kind of the standard 5-6 years ago, including megawatt charging system technology that is coming already, as the key enabler for EV truck charging. By the way, when it comes to trucks, I mean, we have just electrified 600 kilometers of Rhine Orbit corridor, which is one of the busiest logistics routes in Europe. So we are really looking into it, working with customers and try to find the best solutions for them. I think the second biggest change, which is also probably driven by the change in demand and kind of getting into more mass adoption, is the configuration of the sites. So if we look 4 or 5 years ago, we were seeing more kind of distributed charging network with few charges per site, just trying to get some capillarity. But we are seeing more and more, mainly in mature markets like UK, Germany, Netherlands, is kind of a trend where we are seeing more and more big hubs, what we call here hubs. Just as an example, again, we have just opened the biggest hub in the UK, which is located in the National Exhibition Centre of Birmingham, with actually 180 bays that will enable 180 vehicles to charge simultaneously. And probably the final change I would say is the relationship with the customer. I think in the past, networks work a bit more like closed systems, and you actually have to, download the app for each CPO, and there was less roaming and less interconnection. I think we've seen more and more of this roaming, and actually we've seen more and more as well pay-as-you-go systems where you don't even need to register in an app, and you can just tap your credit card and go. And of course, the future, the plug and charge technology, where you will not even need to do that, but just plug your charge and go. So I think, if I think about how the market is changing and what it's impacting, the way companies are interacting with customers, probably these are the three key changes that we have seen in the last 4 to 5 years.
Perfect, Ildefonso. Now, Mark, you have the big responsibility, the huge responsibility, I would say, to close this panel. And I would like an optimistic idea, hope so, because I would like to know, how do you foresee the future of electromobility solutions?
So up till now, electromobility solutions have been rolled out in public largely by what's technically possible against what administrations, governments, local authorities want in their space. The market is relatively immature still. I think we're just beginning to enter from early adopters into the early mass market. But I've always been convinced that once adoption increases, consumers will decide the solutions that they want. I've worked in the industry for 10 years. As I said, I've got a view of how I think it might pan out. I think there'll be more of everything. I think some consumers will want to follow the filling station model and charge their car very, very quickly at a high power charger and replicate their experience now. Some other consumers will be absolutely don't want to do that, and they want to charge outside their house overnight at a kind of a slower AC charger. And for those types of consumers, they will be absolutely wedded to those solutions. And so I think the gravity will change from electric mobility infrastructure being kind of pushed out into the world to being pulled out into the world by consumers and drivers as they become more mature and as more and more drivers make the switch to EVs. And there may well be some new solutions that nobody's thought of yet that might come to the fore, and some relatively large organisations may do better, and some organisations that have a kind of quite a specific kind of solution. If it turns out that consumers don't like that, they may struggle a bit more. So I think there's definitely a shift coming in the way that who effectively dictates what happens, and it will stop being the industry and governments, and it will start being consumers to a much greater degree.
Perfect, Mark. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ildefonso and Ignacio. It was really nice for me to stay here in this debate. Thank you so much for joining. Time's up, and I think that this has been a really interesting panel. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And I take this opportunity to invite you to follow us on our social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today we are celebrating because we have reached 8,000 subscribers, so we are really happy. And now stay connected because we will continue with an interview to Katarzyna Sobotka, Investment Manager e-Mobility at Claritas Investments. So now, hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, today I have the pleasure of interviewing Katarzyna Sobotka, Invest Manager e-Mobility at Claritas Investments. Hi Katarzyna, how are you?
Hello Javiera, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Okay. It's an honor to talk with you again. To begin this interview, let's talk about the electric route with a woman from Poland to Finland for Pink October. How did this initiative come about, and what are the results?
Actually, I've been working in the mobility sector for the last 6 years, and what I've noticed that there is quite a lot of women drivers of EVs, but not so much women involved in the e-mobility sector. Usually on the panels, on this discussion and projects, there are some women, but not so much. So I decided to create in Poland the network of women working in the e-mobility sector called Every Woman. And one of the initiatives that came out during this network, it was a route from Poland, from Warsaw to Lahti to Finland by electric cars. From one side, it was idea to promote e-mobility, but also it was Pink October, as you said. So with the Pink October, there is a rise. There are campaigns on the breast awareness campaign. So we decided to combine those two issues because it's very important from one side to live in a healthy environment, not to pollute by fumes from the cars, but also from other side, from the health reason, it's very important to make awareness on breast because this cancer can be 100% cured unless it's there is a easy or a very quick way to find it. So that's why we decided to go from Poland to Finland by electric cars to promote those two issues.
Great. Congratulations for this initiative. And during the journey, did problems arise due to a lack of chargers, or is the route between Poland and Finland fully covered?
Okay, going to Finland, we need to cross Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, take a ferry to Finland, and the same, and the way back was exactly the same. And honestly speaking, the worst part of the journey was in Poland. Going east from Warsaw to the border with Lithuania, with the 4 electric cars, it was quite difficult because there was not enough charges with the high powers. We couldn't come with all of the 4 cars at the same time to the same charger because in total we would have spent like 2 hours to charge it. So we had to plan. We had to plan the trip, especially in Poland, where to charge, and especially not to meet at the same time. But also we had a different cars, so with the different battery ranges, with the different speed of charging. So in Poland we planned a bit. We were in the contact with each other to say we will be charging there or in other place. But we managed without any problems. It has completely changed actually crossing the border because from Lithuania to Finland, there was quite a lot of charging hubs with the high powers chargers. So we could even with 4 of us with the 4 cars, we could charge in parallel at the same time. So yeah, in general, the trip was a little bit challenging in Poland, but it didn't take much longer than if we had drove with the EC cars.
Okay. And Katarzyna, what do you think are the deficiencies in the charging infrastructure in Poland? Do you believe there is an equitable distribution of charging points on public roads, or it's unequal?
So Poland is quite difficult country in terms of mobility. We have in total 50,000 electric cars, so not so much, and 3,000 charging stations and around 1,000 of DC chargers.
Yeah.
And it's completely not enough for the plans that we have with the electrification of our fleet. There are few companies that provide fast charging. But for sure, there are not enough. Especially what is missing, there are charging hubs with the high power charging on the highways, on the public roads, to drive from one place to another. And this is the greatest constraints in Poland when you talk with people about changing the cars for the electric cars. They are afraid that there is no charging infrastructure to charge it. Okay, it's possible to drive, but you need to plan. And the worst thing is to meet the other electric car owners charging at the charger at the same time, because because the charging speed, of course, it will dramatically decrease. So for sure, what is missing, it's a lot of high-speed charging hubs on the highways and speedways in Poland.
Yeah, and what about Finland? What do you think are there deficiencies in the charging infrastructure there or not?
Whenever I talk with whenever I go to the different countries, I always, for me, it's a bit different, and for us, because we know, where to search for the chargers, where to, how to plan the trips. But whenever I talk with my colleagues from the different countries who either drives with the electric cars, they always complain about the lack of the chargers. Yeah. So it doesn't matter which country, there is always the problems with finding chargers. Even like in London, I recently talked, there is a problem even to find the charger for the slow charging. When you go to the office, you come with your Tesla, and it's quite difficult to even to find the charging for that time. So in general, different cars are available on the market, smaller, bigger, with the smaller range, with the bigger range, SUVs, mini cars. So from side of the OEMs, the different cars are available. But still, even though that there is a lot of charging operators, there is a lot of chargers producers, AC/DC, there is still missing enough number of the different type of infrastructure to make this switch comfortable from EC car to the electric car.
Okay, and what measures need to be taken for all European countries to be covered in terms of charging infrastructure? Do you think governments should be more involved? Do you think more incentives are needed?
The greatest bottleneck in every country, whenever I talk, is the grid connection. To obtain the grid connection for the chargers, in Poland, it can take between 12 up to 24 months, or sometimes even longer. So even though if I decide today to build a charger and I have a location, the charger might come up in 2 years in operation. So what is really important to make it more feasible for the DSOs to be able to be active and to be able to deliver grid connection for the chargers, for the charging hubs, especially where the highways usually they are in the middle of nowhere. So it's quite difficult to put the cable to this place because it's of the length of the cable, the cost, and so on. And yeah, this is quite important for DS to support DSOs in terms of the regulation and also financing like a growth of the distribution network. And of course, the governments should play vital role and really be supportive for the e-mobility sector.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Kasia, are there plans to conduct a Newswoman route in 2024?
For sure, there will be lots of activities for women in e-mobility sector. We will meet for, of course, what is important is the network, to exchange the knowledge, to exchange the views about e-mobility. If there will be the route, we don't know yet, but we are hoping that we will go maybe to the other direction, maybe Spain, let's see, or Portugal. We need to decide. But for sure, this year there will the coming months there will be other activities for like networking and supporting women in the mobility sector.
Okay, and what would you say to women who want to join the field of electric mobility?
Don't be afraid, because like 50% of owners of the cars, of the electric cars, are women. So to design the services, to design products, the different point of view that we women can bring to this sector is very important, because e-mobility is very inclusive and it should be very diversified. So I encourage every woman to consider career and working in this sector. And we have to say that this is completely new sector. So you don't need, it's very hard to have a experience or knowledge to enter. So you learn by doing. So that's the idea really behind. But to observe, to learn the trends, to participate in the conferences like this one, to learn the knowledge about e-mobility, and being not afraid of new challenges, because we need to change the world for the more environmental friendly.
Yeah, and finally, Cassia, I wanted to ask you what actions need to be taken for European countries to continue progressing towards electric mobility at general level, of course.
For me, what I also notice is education. Many people are afraid of the electric cars because they don't know what it is. So for sure, like going to the clients, people, to learn about the e-mobility, what is the electric car, trying to solve the problems with the range anxiety, learning about the charging. It's not really difficult, but we are quite afraid of the things that we don't know. So what is very, very important in every country, not talking about the investments and not talking about like the cars, it's still about the education. It's education in terms of the environmental reasons, why we should change our habits for electric cars, but not also for the electric cars. It's also changing our habits for commuting. Maybe sometimes it's better to choose a bike or like electric bike, or maybe it's better to choose electric bus to travel to school or to work. So it's really important to talk about it. Also, the huge trend is the micro mobility. So this one related, like for example, with this e-cargo bikes that you can take kids or shopping with you and bike with around the cities. But it's really like a lot of efforts are needed to put for the education, from the smallest one, from the children's side to the senior level.
Yeah, I see. Cassia, thank you very much for participating in this event and for your interesting presentation. I hope we can talk again soon.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation.
And those who are watching this event, stay tuned as the next panel is about to begin. Thank you very much. We continue with this third panel of discussion titled New Technological Trends in Public Rechargings on Motorways and Cities. Today we have the honor of debating with Alan Augusto, Vice Chair of Communication at ChargeUp Europe, and Steven van der Burg, Sales Director at Ebusco. Hi everyone, it's an honor to stay here with you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Javiera. Good afternoon.
Hi, Alan, thank you for participation. From ChargeUp Europe perspective, do you consider that in most European countries, the distribution of public charging infrastructure is equitable or unequal? How could this situation be improved?
Okay, so thank you for your question and great to be here. So distribution of public charging infrastructure is indeed unequal. But I think that if we want to properly address this topic, I think it's important that we bring a little bit of data to the discussion. So I brought a little bit of data with me here. And just to give an idea of the type of inequality we're talking about, the EU have on average 106 charging points per 100,000 inhabitants. Okay, that's the average that we have today. But the reality is that we have just like 7 countries that are above that average, with the top 2 exceeding by a lot that average. And for all the other 20s that are below the average, we have 14 countries that not even reach to the mark of 50 charging points. So there's a big disparity in this. Another important factor that also brings that it's also connected to this is AV adoption maturity, which is also quite uneven. So to this date, I think we have like just 4 or 5 countries that have 4 to 5% of EV share on their total national fleets, while many others do not even get 0.5% on that same metric. And another discussion that we could be making is about the AC and DC split, but that's going to bring us to develop even further. And we could be doing this type of analysis from many different perspectives. But what I'm trying just to say that, and just to try to explain, is that this is the type of analysis that is not that linear. It has its own complexity because it depends on the local market conditions, it depends on local policies, availability of funding. There are many factors that impact this. And then the question is, how can we actually improve on that, right? So I think that having an uniform approach to the development and deployment of public accessible charging infrastructure is crucial. And it's good that we have AFIR now. We have a new regulation in place that actually sets the targets for that. So we know that AFIR becomes applicable in April next year, and it will require member states to meet minimum capacity targets as well as distance-based targets on 10T corridors, and that's extremely important. But the regulation it does that in a smart way, let's just say that, because it still gives member states flexibility to actually come up with their own plans on how to actually meet those targets. And member states will know how to do that better than anyone because they know their own local market conditions, they know their own characteristics, so they will have the best plans to do so. Just want to point that another thing that it would be very important to improve that situation is that if we can have in place, or if you can facilitate the job of CPOs, which are the entities that are basically installing the charging infrastructure on the field, that would be fundamental to speed up from construction permits to e-charging license, to eventually having subsidies in place to facilitate the decision-making process of CPO when it decides to install a charging station, but eventually in a remote area where you're not sure about the utilization, how it's going to work on that specific location, all of that can contribute to a better situation in terms of distribution. And I think that we have the opportunity to develop a little further, but as long as we are able to actually get public and private sector involved, and I'm talking about national regulators, distribution system operators, government, cities, all involved to actually work together to further improve the conditions that support the development of the sector, we will ultimately enhance the development of the charging infrastructure, where we'll be better off than what we are today.
Yeah, good point. We will come back to this topic later. Okay. And hi, Steven. Thank you for participating. Steven, Ebusco advocates for depot charging instead of opportunity charging. Do you anticipate a future where buses exclusively charge at that post?
Yeah, at the end, for us, and again, welcome here. Thanks for having us. Looking at this specific, depot versus opportunity charging discussion, I think it's already there for a long time. It's already there. We are active now in the industry for approximately 10 years, and we have been in the discussion already for a long time. It's not like, we don't like opportunity charging or that we are not a fan of it. For us, depot charging or plug-in charging and opportunity charging exists next to each other. We do have quite a lot of opportunity charge buses in the field. But what we do see is that at the end, having challenges in terms of space reduction in cities for pantograph solutions. We see challenges in terms of TCO because if you want to charge your buses in operation, then normally this will be done during peak hours in terms of cost. While at depot, if you can charge your buses during the night, your cost will be way lower because electricity prices are way lower during the night. On top of that, we see that the availability of energy is, an open topic, especially in countries where there's a big focus on green energy and where even operators have an obligation to only drive on green energy. Having that during the day is sometimes quite a big issue or challenge. We see, of course, grid connection issues. We see that prices, of course, are extremely high during the day because there is also a big, demand of green energy, and the supply on that specific moment is not really high. Therefore, we think looking at TCO, looking at operations, looking at kind of operator perspective, that plug-in charging during the night is the best solution.
Okay, and Stephen, while many believe that fast charging will replace slow charging, there is a debate about whether fast charging damages vehicle batteries or not. What is your opinion on this? Do you think both charging methods will coexist?
First of all, there are different battery technologies. The most common used in the vehicle industry are NMC batteries and LFP battery cells. These battery cells are not really designed for high power charging. Especially LFP can handle up to 1C, NMC can do a bit faster, up to 2 or 3C. But there are also LTO battery packs. That's the third technology that's commonly used for batteries, but again, not for the vehicle industry. And there we can see charging kind of cycles up to 10C. So there we see that high power charging can be, an opportunity for these battery types. While the vehicle industry, so buses, cars, trucks, is focused on NMC or LFP, it's also not our recommendation and not battery supplier recommendation to do fast charging because it really has an impact on aging of batteries. It has an impact on temperature because the faster you charge, the higher the temperature will be, and temperature is sensitive for batteries. That is one of the most important elements for aging of batteries. So the lower or the more you can keep your temperature under control, and the longer your lifetime will be. On the other hand, we also see that fast charging can also be done in certain ranges of battery cells, so between 80 or 20 and 80% SOC approximately. And the smaller that window, so between 30 and 70 is even better for not damaging the battery. So it's physics. The faster you charge, the more it will harm your battery. And of course, you can try to avoid, damage to your battery by liquid cooling. But if there is an issue with your liquid cooling or your system of liquid cooling is not functioning well, at the end you'll have an impact on, the state of health of your battery. So therefore, we always try to do slow charging as much as possible because it has a positive impact on, the kind of lifetime expectancy and lifetime extension of a battery cell. And especially for public transport, where operators are looking for concession period or bus lifetimes of 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, even 15 years, we would like to accommodate as well, and to really have a solution for these operators to avoid battery replacement.
Yeah. Remember that this is a debate, so if you want, Alan or Steven, you want to interrupt the other speaker, you can do it. Just raise your hand. Alan, do you believe that the national context align with private investment expectations, or do you think more incentives are needed?
Well, I think this takes us back a little bit to the first question, as this sort of alignment will vary depending on the country and the local market conditions. Again, EV adoption, funding, level of deployment, availability of charging infrastructure, and many other things. So I'll try to cover my answer. My answer will not cover, of course, all different scenarios that we may have across Europe, but nonetheless, I think that we can make a few observations given some similarities that we have among markets, and in particular regarding direct incentives and subsidies, which may be important for private investment decisions. What we have been seen and continue to see are many different schemes that basically aim to foster or reduce, let's say to a certain extent, the cost of either adopting or transition to IV, or at least to support at least the cost for the deployment of EV charging infrastructure. And those usually take the forms of financial incentives, and that goes from tax credits to rebates and grants that companies and individuals can benefit from them, and also from incentives on infrastructure. So those types of incentives that support the development of EV charging infrastructure. And again, the aim here is to ease the decision-making process of CPO and assessing the investments needed to deploy infrastructure. And this type of incentive can be designed in a way that is more specific to a local market and specific to meet specific use cases, such as I mentioned, the installation of EV charging infrastructure in remote areas, or eventually dedicated charging infrastructure for heavy-duty vehicles, which usually or are expected at least to require larger investments, eventually in grid reinforcements and integration of additional technologies. So these are basically mostly the type of direct incentives that we have in place today. But again, the use and suitability of those incentives will vary and need to vary according to the conditions of each country. What I think that would be important and at least interesting to explore here is there's one type of subsidy, and actually I'm not going to even say subsidy, I'm going to say support, that is kind of like it can be instrumental to incentivize private investments, which is basically the implementation of regulatory frameworks or policies that act as facilitators. So I'm going to give you an example. I think it's easier just to explain. So we had recently the revised renewable energy directive approved, and under that directive there is a credit mechanism that allows CPOs to actually sell credits to fuel suppliers based on the renewable electricity that was charged on EVs. And this has the potential to actually constitute a relevant additional revenue stream to CPOs, which then, of course, would facilitate the decision-making process when deciding to invest. However, this is a directive different from AFIR, so it requires transposition to national laws, and the transposition can take up to 18 months. So this this type of regulatory framework, it's important, but it can serve like to boost private investment, but it is still dependent on additional steps to be applicable. Just to conclude on this, I think that private investments and expectations and the availability of incentives and subsidies will and should vary according to market conditions. Nonetheless, I think it's always important to highlight and worth mentioning that if you have like a supportive regulatory framework, that also helps a lot to create a favorable private investment, a favorable environment for private investment, which not necessarily take the form of direct subsidies or incentives.
Yeah. Before moving on the next round of questions, I want to invite those who are watching the event to follow Mobility Portal Europe on social media and connect with the speakers, with Alan and Stephen, and the companies on LinkedIn. Now, Stephen, you are back. Okay. Stephen, Ebusco has developed a depot charger. What features does it have?
When we started with development of a depot charger, it mainly was because of kind of requests out of operators, bus operators. You need to imagine when we started 10 years ago, when we started developing an electric bus, there was of course a kind of CCS communication protocol at that time. But there was also a lot of dialect in that CCS communication protocol. It was for sure not on the level as it is right now. And these operators, they just want to have one point of contact because they bought a bus at Ibasco and they bought the charger at ABB or another kind of OEM. And when there was a kind of miscommunication, the operator was always in the middle, fighting with us, fighting with the OEM, charging OEM to see where the problem was. By just supplying a kind of ecosystem, by supplying a bus, by supplying a charger, by supplying even the infrastructure itself, including cabling, including civil works, including grid connection, all these kind of things, we really had a solution for an operator where they had one point of contact. If the system wasn't working, if the bus wasn't charging, they just went to Ibasco and we solved it. And that was at that moment, especially in the beginning, an extremely important factor for operators to really go into this transition, because that was really exciting for them, or even they were quite nervous about it.
Okay.
Right now, of course, that CCS communication protocol is way more on a certain level where we say, okay, for now it really doesn't matter where we put an Ibasco charger or an Heliox charger or an AB charger or a Siemens charger. It works well. What at this moment, what are really added values on Ibasco charger is the back end, is right now the transition towards electric bus operations is kind of mature. We have been through a lot of challenges also already in the past years. And for now, it's really in optimizing that electric bus operation. That's the discussion that we have. And by supplying a bus, by supplying a charger, by supplying a smart charging system, by supplying even bi-directional charging in the future, where you can really align to the grid, even provide energy battery storage systems on depot to limit grid connections and to really bring that down, to even make money, to lower your TCO on electricity trading, because if all these buses are standing at a depot from 7 p.m. till 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning, that's a time frame of 8 till 10 hours. We only need to charge for 2 hours, and then a battery of a bus completely full. So the other 8 hours or 6 hours, that bus or that battery, specifically that battery, is doing nothing. You need to imagine when you have 100 or 150 or 200 buses standing at a depot with 400 kilowatt hour battery each bus having, so you're really speaking about capacities of 40 megawatt hour, 50 megawatt hour, just standing there at the depot in a time frame of 6-8 hours doing nothing. And we would like to use that battery not only for propulsion of a bus, but also in order to make sure that this energy transition that we are having into green energy, that we can do that in a decent way. So we would like to provide kind of services to operators where our battery is also being used for the FCR market, where it's being used for unbalanced markets, and all these kind of electricity markets.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Stephen. Now, Alan, what major changes have you observed in the charging infrastructure industry in recent years, and how has ChargeUp Europe contributed to this market growth?
Okay, and I think that we had indeed a few significant changes, and that's mainly due to three main factors, I'll say. Technology, probably consumer behavior and policies. And policies not only promoting adoption of EVs, but also policies that support deployment of EV charging infrastructure. And on that front, I think that I could highlight just like one of the major changes that we had. It's the expansion of the charging network in Europe. So just to give an idea, um, the charging infrastructure network, the public charging infrastructure has grown more than 900% in the past 8 years. It's a lot. It has reached more than 600,000 charging points to this date. But we know that this is just the beginning. And by 2030, if we just look to the capacity targets that we have on AFIR, we have a scenario that the public network is going to have to grow an additional 400%. But again, bearing in mind that AFIR is just like the minimum targets. And from the assumption that the industry, we want to provide not just a minimum service, and given the EV adoption predictions that we will be having by 2030, it is, and again, from a perspective of total capacity, I'm just like bringing another a few bits of data to this as well. But from a perspective of total capacity of the public charging network, we're then not talking about 400%. We're talking about a 900% growth from what we have today. And that's a lot of infrastructures, regardless if it's 400 or 900. Truth is, we need to speed up the pace of development, the pace of deployment. And to do so, it's crucial that we are capable of tackling the bottlenecks associated to the installation of charging points. And again, I think that we can develop a little bit further on this. But and let me just one small side note on this. I'm bringing these pieces of data. So for anyone interested to know more about it, this data comes from the State of Industry report from our association. Anyone that wants to know more, there's lots of interesting data there, insights and case studies. So go to our website and download it. But then getting back to the question and just bringing the aspect of technology and consumer behavior, I would also definitely highlight how it actually changed the relation between drivers and their EVs. So it used to be a much more kind of like use of RFID cards, and now it's a lot more digital use of mobile apps that enable remote functionalities. And that was only possible because technology was there, the digital infrastructure was there, and that's extremely important. But again, a lot to be done in both fronts, on digital and conventional infrastructure. And then addressing your question, where does ChargeUp contribute to all that? So as an association of market companies that are actually driving the development of these infrastructures, we do have a very good understanding of our sector needs. So what we aim to do here, we aim to advocate for policies that actually support these developments and the deployment of these infrastructures. I could give an example. One AFIR, for instance, for us, it has always been very clear that the former directive would have to evolve to a regulation exactly to address the issue of lack of uniform approach. So what we try to do as an association, we try to have a very hands-on approach on the problems and the issues that we have in our sector, either by serving on a role of a knowledge hub on topics that may be not very obvious to stakeholders that are associated to our sector. Stephen was mentioning about heavy duty vehicles as well. We have many others that are related to that digital infrastructure. I talked to a few stakeholders on that, and eventually they do not have a good understanding of how all of that work. But also we also try to connect to these strategic stakeholders and try to actually explain how they can actually support the sector, which ultimately will help to deploy even more charging infrastructure. That's basically our job here as an association.
Okay, congratulations for your jobs. And Stephen, what challenges have a Busco faced in developing chargers and charging buses? How could this situation be resolved?
Yeah, again, so in the beginning, it was mainly on having the right communication between a bus and a charger, and of course, a lot of development has been done in the past few years. So we are not in that, we are not facing these issues anymore. For now, what we are looking for as a bus industry is having kind of standards on opportunity charging. And so there is a standard for plug-in charging. We are you all using Combo 2. We are all using CCS communication protocols. But for opportunity charging, there are still two systems, as pen to up and pen to down. And that makes not our life, especially life of an operator, sometimes a bit more difficult, especially in areas where buses are crossing each other into the cities of each other. They would like to charge on the charging infrastructure of the neighbors, of course, or they want to charge on the charging infrastructure of other operators that are nearby. We see kind of a discussion whether where the responsibility and the ownership of charging infrastructure should be. For now, it's still the operator that's having the ownership of charging infrastructure. But we see that also PTAs, public transport authorities, or governments, or provinces, or municipalities are taking over their responsibility and that ownership of charging infrastructure. Right? Because it's at the end, it's a kind of public charging infrastructure where you also would like to charge buses or cars or trucks or other modalities other than buses. And that's what we also see now as kind of future development for coming 2-3 years, is to make sure that all these different modalities are speaking with each other. And that we know, okay, a bus needs to have a certain time slot, for example, between 12 noon and 12:10. So it needs to charge for 10 minutes. But that's whatever truck that's incoming, and wants to see whether a charger is available or not, is having a kind of notification that that charger will be available in the coming 10 or 20 minutes. And so there needs to be communication between different modalities. And I think that is something where maybe also governments or overlaying kind of institutes can take responsibility, because for us as an operator, for us as an OEM, or for us as bus industry, that's of course quite difficult to take the responsibility.
Okay. And Alan, we have already been talking about this topic, but what are the primary challenges currently facing this sector? What is the top three?
The top three.
Yeah.
I'm going to just present the way that I actually envision to address this question. But as we have been talking so far, the transition to EVs continues to accelerate, and that puts an increasing pressure on many stakeholders. Okay, so CPOs, DSOs, urban planners, cities. If there's going to be sufficient and availability of charging infrastructure to actually meet this growing demand from EV drivers, and that's both on the private and also in the public charging infrastructure. So the first challenge that we would have, I'm gonna say that, is the need for scale up. Scale up the charging infrastructure in two fronts, and I'll make my point, because we need to not only scale up on the conventional on-site infrastructure, getting the stations installed and available for EV drivers, but also on the digital infrastructure, which basically translates all the interactions that take place behind the curtains among CPOs, EMSPs, DSOs, roaming platforms, to actually ensure that all that ecosystem, everything that's it's actually taking place seamless, to ensure that EV driver can go there and charge without having to worry about anything. So making sure that all the systems and processes needed for that are actually running smoothly. Stephen also mentioned about that as well in his previous answer. So if I may, I'm just going to give you two examples of what happens here, and then I'm just going to point out a few of the challenges that we are facing today. So for instance, regarding installation of charging points, one of the major bottlenecks the CPOs have today is the time that it takes to actually have a grid connection point. So all the timing that is required from the time that it decides to install a charger to the time that it's actually going to be operating and available to the EV driver, all of that takes a lot of time. And it's not only related to the grid connection process from the DSO, but also to the permittings that are necessary, construction permittings, e-charging license from municipalities. So all of that, it takes a lot of time. And we believe that those processes should be simplified and should be accelerated through digitalization and standardization. Also have in mind that many CPOs work just basically operating in different countries. So if we are able to actually establish a set of procedures that are standardized, they will probably be able to scale up faster. They will be able to replicate their capabilities in different markets, and that will be really helpful for CPOs.
Okay.
Just having said that, and let me just make a small detour here, because I'd like to develop a little bit on this DSO front, because we all know the strategic role that grids have to actually ensure to enable the green transition, and that's something that's quite obvious for all of us. But we do understand that DSOs have lots of constraints. They are dealing with limited resources to deal with grid upgrades, additional complexity from renewables, and at the same time, we as a sector are asking them for faster charging, a faster digital process to speed up grid connections. So we all acknowledge the importance of that, and I think that we mentioned we already talked a little bit about funding and regulatory frameworks. So I just want to say that we also need to ensure that DSOs have access to the resources needed to accomplish all that, because we are not going to get the green transition and we're not going to get enough charging points without the DSOs by our side. If I may, just to close on this, on the digital infrastructure, also important to ensure that it continues to be developed and deployed. I would refer just to, for instance, ISO 15118, which is crucial for bidirectional charging, as Stephen mentioned before, using the batteries of EVs to actually provide additional services and eventually monetize on the electricity that is stored in those batteries. And also the digital infrastructure in which the ISO 15118 is dependent on, which is basically the public key infrastructure, which is it's basically a framework of digital certificates that serves to ensure security and privacy authentication between CPOs, EMSPs, EV drivers. Not only that infrastructure needs to be in place, but it's important also to guarantee a set of governance rules to the entities that are running this PKI, making sure that they will guarantee, they will ensure to all parties that rely on that infrastructure to develop their services, that they are going to give that on a fair level basis, and they will not limit access to that infrastructure, because eventually, ultimately, if they do so, that would represent fewer choices for the consumer, and we do not want that. So just to close on this, key takeaway here, we need to scale up, and we need to make sure that we have the right conditions in place, both in the digital and the conventional front of the infrastructure.
Great, thank you, Alan, for your point, your viewpoint. Now, Stephen, I am going to ask the same question for both of you. So I don't know who wants to start, but the question is, how do you envision the future of charging infrastructure in cities and on highways? Do you think different technologies will coexist, such as green hydrogen and megawatt charging system? Who wants to start?
Alan, floor is yours.
Okay. Actually, a few things that I'm going to mention here, Stephen has already mentioned before, but to be, it is a little bit of predicting scenarios, but we have a quite good idea of how that's going to evolve. So I think that in a broad sense, charging infrastructure will continue to evolve as it has been so far, but not only through a more kind of equitable charging network in terms of distribution. That was one thing that we mentioned in the first question, but as well as a comprehensive charging network that fits more conveniently to the purposes and the needs of EV drivers. but also to a charging infrastructure that supports additional use of EVs as true batteries on wheels, and that was the point that Stephen made before, and that both in a public and a private context. Looking to the urban and city context, I mean, EVs and EV charging infrastructure combined have a huge potential to serve as flexibility sources to the energy system. It could serve not only as a storage device in moments of surplus generation of, let's just say, renewable sources, but also as power banks to feed back to the grid or to our homes or offices in periods of grid constraint or of higher tariffs. That's just it's a way of looking to this. So and this, it does not just have like potential. It actually create potential benefits not only to DSOs. They would have to lead potentially with fewer grid reinforcements in numerous cases, but that also supports the creation of new business models that supported by bidirectional technology that could be instrumentalized then by EVs and EV charging infrastructure, and would benefit not only companies that are providing those services, but also the consumers. So I think it's a clear win-win here. But again, we need to get the infrastructure ready, and the sector is paving the way to get to that point. I don't think that we are there yet, but we're paving the way. On highways, and just very briefly, just to close on this, and combining with your question about coexistent different technologies, and specifically because you mentioned hydrogen, I think that the question partially answered itself. This is a green transition, and we understand that hydrogen it's considered as a valid technology or solution for decarbonizing some sectors. But then as the aim is to decarbonize, it's important to ensure that we are using or giving space to green hydrogen. As for mobility and transport, I really think that in both segments, light and heavy duty, we already have full electric solutions that are in a clear, more kind of like advanced stage of providing ready to use, ready to adopt solutions. So which make them kind of like an easier and more obvious choice. But I would not just stop here, and I would not just finish before mentioning that we do recognize that hydrogen is also prescribed on AFIR. But if you just look to that, the targets that are to be met by hydrogen are set to 2030, so it's in a more distant time. I'm not going to go in detail in hydrogen. I'm not even an expert on that. So just trying to at least address that specific point of your question. On the MCS, I think it's pretty clear for us that it's not a matter of they will coexist or not. It will. It's just a matter of when, because this technology basically will do to HDVs what ultra-fast charging does today for light-duty vehicles. So, but again, then this is a type of technology that required lots of power. So it's a different, like, we're going to use a word here, but it's a different beast in terms of investment. So we need to have in mind that either more significant investments are going to be required from CPOs to install that infrastructure. And in that case, and given that probably in the first years, utilization is going to be lower, subsidies may have an important role here to actually at least kickstart the installation of this infrastructure. But also, that's basically the point that I want to make here on HDVs. Just making one small note, we do have a paper on electrification of HDVs in our website as well. So anyone willing to know more, feel invited to go there. To finish on this, I think that the EV charging infrastructure sector, and I'm suspicious to say because I'm really excited about it, definitely have a challenge, exciting and challenging future ahead. So. But that makes the industry very vibrant, and we are working our way and to make sure that the charging infrastructure will be there and will not be seen as an obstacle to the transition to EVs, and of course to clean transition to the zero emission mobility and transport. We want to make sure that we have the conditions to actually make EV charging infrastructure one of the major advantages to push people, to at least incentive people to actually transition to EVs.
Okay. And Steven, what do you think? Do you agree with Alan's position?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on that, first part regarding bidirectional charging. I think it's a major challenge. The energy transition itself is going to be a major challenge. The energy transition towards green energy is going to be a major transition. And I live in the Netherlands. There are so many areas where a grid connection is not anymore feasible. There is just no grid connection availability anymore. And so if you're building a distribution center, if you're building a new depot for buses, if you're building whatever, building houses, there is simply kind of queue of 3 to 5 years before you can get a grid connection. You need to imagine that this transition needs to continue, and houses are being built. Literally now there is a city in the Netherlands, it's called Almere, and they are building houses and there is no grid connection for these houses. Imagine that. It's really already on that phase. And so I think that's a kind of responsibility that the industry has, bus industry, car industry, but mobility industry overall, is to make sure that we have a kind of responsible way of making use of the existing grid infrastructure. And that we can do by means of bidirectional charging, but also by, for example, to really take a look at the lightweight or the empty weight of our vehicles. We have been developing composite buses where we have huge weight reduction, literally numbers of 30% reduction compared to traditional steel buses. We see that 30% also back in our consumption reduction. That's also approximately 25 till 30%. By having that on one bus, of course, the impact's not that big, but if you're doing that on an entire fleet of buses, your grid connection can also be 30% less because you just simply don't need that energy. And that energy, that green energy, can just go to some other whatever use. All these measures, that is extremely important for the future, to make sure that the entire world can just all these different industries have access to green energy. So that's a bit on, I think, future of charging. If you take a look at that highway infrastructure, of course the bus industry is also of part of the bus industry are coaches. Right now, coaches are not part of the transition. Majority is still driving on diesel. But also these coaches, they need to be transformed at a certain moment into electric. And there we need to have, kind of European charging infrastructure in place by means of MCS or by means of whatever the existing 300, 400, 450 kilowatt charging infrastructure, but really helps to also accelerate on, these transition of coaches. Hydrogen itself, we are not developing in it right now. We see that the current battery technology is improving, but even without whatever the improvement of the batteries, the range of buses at this moment is already enough for city traffic, for intercity traffic. Again, not on coaches, so we cannot drive from Amsterdam and Barcelona yet on one charge, but it's at this moment having that kind of intercity transport, regional intercity transport, that's already feasible with batteries. And then going into hydrogen for now, looking at TCO, it's way more expensive on capex, on investment, but also on your OpEx in terms of maintenance, in terms of hydrogen itself. All the existing hydrogen is not even green yet. There is quite some gray hydrogen as well. So therefore, we said, okay, we for sure believe in hydrogen, electricity, multiple kind of electricities. But at the end, hydrogen bus is also an electric bus, but instead of batteries, there's hydrogen. So for us, it really doesn't matter. But we are, or at least the industry, is really focused on TCO. And right now, hydrogen doesn't make any sense in terms of TCO. So therefore, I think it's going to take another few years. And then might be the case that, for example, coaches are also going into hydrogen.
Steven and Alan, it has been an honor to listen to your explanations, and thank you very much for participating in this event.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all who were part of this event titled European Trends in Charging Infrastructure. We have the participation of top-level companies such as Charge Up Europe, Ebusco, PowerGo, Charim, Total Energies, BP, Trojan Energy, Claritas Investment, and others. Our schedule for upcoming events and marketing activities for 2024 is now available. Those who would like to request it can do at info@mobilityportal.lat. I hope you have enjoyed this event as much as I have. See you at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.